In cross-cultural counseling. And he's the one who claimed that cross-cultural counseling is the fourth force in counseling field after psychodynamic, behavioral, cognitive, and humanistic counseling approaches. He has written many, many books and developed many useful training tools for professional counselors. And we are very happy that he's here with us, and I'm sure you're going to learn a lot from him. And because our time is pretty short, so we will hand this over to Paul. Dr. Peterson.
Good morning. We're going to do 3, maybe 4 things this morning. First thing we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to listen to a few minutes of a simulation of the internal dialogue of a schizophrenic client in a job interview. Videotape or an audio tape put together called Virtual Hallucinations that gives you an idea of the extreme form of what internal dialogue might look like for a in pathology. Start with that, okay?
We have a little problem. Your speaker, one of the speakers is on that room. Yeah. I'm sorry. Perhaps, Paul, can you talk without the mic for just a short time? Can we get this on?
Well, the next step is an audio recording and then a video recording. I understand. Let me do this. Let me do the overheads first on the model that I'll be teaching, and then we'll change the order a little bit. How's that sound?
Flexible. Sounds flexible.
If I can make this work. Yeah. Okay, if you look at your overheads, the handout, that'll give you the handout of the overheads that I'll be discussing. This will give you the conceptual basis of what I'm going to be talking about. And the book, Hidden Messages in Culture-Centered Counseling, is out with the other books that gives you the long form. That book I started in 1968 and I finished it in the year 2000. So it's been a long time in the process. Okay. Each of us belongs to many different cultures at the same time. For the next 60 minutes, 50 minutes, 40 minutes, I'm going to ask you to imagine that there are 1,000 people sitting in your lap that you've collected over a lifetime of friends, enemies, fantasies, mentors, mentees, heroes, heroines, and that those people never sleep. They talk to you, they talk to one another. Competence, the first step of competence is hearing, learning to hear the voices that you have and learning to hear the voices your client has. If when your client comes in and sits down, if you believe there are only 2 people in that room, you're already in trouble. There are thousands of people in that room, many of whom are talking much louder than you are. Just like here. This is a good, whoa. This is a good metaphor. Okay. Maybe if you could, yeah. If you could put those up one by one. Okay. I'll pass this around. You can take a look at it. We'll get to that in just a few minutes. Okay. Before you interact with your client, it's important to ask yourself 3 questions. First question is, what did they do? Or what did you do? What was the behavior? Wow. I think I can get along without this. First question is, what? Jung invented Lilian and considered him the most effective teacher that he had ever studied under, who was a figment of his own imagination. Of course, his colleagues saw that insanity, but Jung was an unusual individual. Vygotsky, one of my more recent heroes, talks about inner speech. He turns Piaget in his head. Piaget said inner speech is something that children grow out of. Vygotsky says that inner speech is something that adults grow into. They become more capable of monitoring and mobilizing inner speech. Psychology began as a study of consciousness. Okay? The intrapersonal resources are primary to non-Western therapy resources also in a variety of ways. Spiritual healing, meditation, focused thought, learning confusion. Ancestral connections, shamanism, ritual behavior, in a whole variety of ways. Internal dialogue has a rich tradition both in the West and in Asia for completely different reasons.
They need you to use this for the recording.
Oh, okay. So both Western and non-Western therapy has a rich tradition of the use of internal dialogue, okay? Clients do not say everything they're thinking. Does that surprise anyone? I hope not. Sometimes they're afraid, sometimes they're embarrassed, sometimes it's too private, sometimes there's no time, sometimes they want to keep it secret, sometimes it would be difficult to explain, sometimes it just isn't worth the effort for them to really tell you what they're thinking. But trust me, clients say only part of what they're thinking. Internal dialogue, being able to monitor your own internal dialogue and ideally monitor the internal dialogue of your client, is very useful. Therapists thought negatively about themselves were less helpful. Self-talk is a way for clients to manipulate the environment. Perhaps self-talk is the only way that a client can manipulate the environment. You can't change things out there, but you can reframe and change how you think about those things out there. Self-talk facilitates hypothesis formation. Most of psychology tests hypotheses. What I'm interested in is where did those hypotheses come from in the first place? And I suggest that they came from deep inside you. Self-talk facilitates problem solving. Thinking itself may be a form of self-talk. So self-talk is an important concept no matter how you look at it. Internal dialogue is difficult to measure. The little research that's been done to measure it suggests that about 67% of your internal dialogue is negative. Nobody knows why. We can only speculate, but substantially more of your internal dialogue is negative than positive, for whatever reason. After the fact reports are not accurate. Thought listing is another way you can measure internal dialogue, but that's by the time you're listed your thoughts, you're thinking about something else. Thinking out loud is misleading. You have not, if you try sitting here right now, try to capture what you're thinking about, you'll have a very difficult time. And thought stopping, where someone claps their hands and says, okay, what were you thinking of just at the moment when I clap my hands? That tends to be artificial as well. So we have no adequate way of measuring the self-talk process. Therapy, in the model that I'll be presenting to you, involves three simultaneous conversations. First, the explicit dialogue between two people. Second is the therapist's internal dialogue. Now, both of those, most of you can talk and think at the same time. Is that accurate? Is that too much? Not easy, and most of the training of clinicians is helping clinicians learn how to think and talk at the same time. What I'm telling you is that is not enough. You also have to be able to monitor what the client is thinking. Now, the more cultural difference there is between you and the client, the less likely you will know what the client is thinking, but you will know two things about what that client is thinking. You will know partly that the client is thinking positive things, and also partly that the client is thinking negative things. Imagine the client sitting there with an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other shoulder, both talking at the same time as the client is sitting there listening to you. That's the picture I want you to have in your mind of the model that I will present to you and that I hope you will participate in. Okay. The triad training model involves four persons interacting. You've got the culturally different therapist, like a white male therapist, and then three other people, say black females, as the culturally similar coach-client, culturally similar coach-pro-counselor, culturally similar coached anti-counselor. So you're sitting there with you're a white male, you're sitting there with three black female clients, one as a devil, one as an angel, and one as a client. And they're all three talking at the same time. Plus, of course, your own internal dialogue. That's complexity is your friend, right? Triad model works best when both positive and negative feedback are provided at the same time, when the interview is role-played, not actual, when it's used in training, not in actual therapy, when the therapist is as different as possible from the other three people, when the pro and the anti are trained ahead of time, when the feedback is immediate and continuous, when the pro, anti, and client are authentic from the same culture, and when the therapist learns to listen to all three. Typically, the first time they use this, the students block out the pro and the anti as noise. And after about 3 times, they become able to mobilize those messages into what they say next. The pro-counselor is a deliberately positive voice in the client's mind, articulating positive unspoken messages, emphasizing common ground, trying to build something here, bringing the client and therapist closer together, helping the therapist stay on track, provides positive verbal and nonverbal. Have any of you ever spoken to a group where somebody in the audience is sitting there going like that? It makes you crazy. Have any of you spoken to a group where someone in the audience is sitting there going like that? It's a wonderful, everybody sit there and go like that. It really feels good when you're up in front. Positive and verbal and nonverbal, verbal and nonverbal feedback, reframes and restates the messages, reinforces key words. This, helpful, long-term, whatever the key word might be. The anti-counselor, the devil, is sitting on the client's other shoulder. Exaggerates differences in behavior, drives the client and therapist further apart, articulates negative, embarrassing thoughts, protects and promotes the problem. Working with alcoholics. Imagine if you had to choose between going out for a drink and going to a therapist's office. The anti-counselor has a ball saying, do you really want to go in there and listen to all that crap? Wouldn't it be better just for us to just walk down the street with our buddies and have a drink? Promote the problem, distract the therapist, sometimes by physically getting in the way, keep the conversation superficial and demands immediate results. We've been here 5 minutes and you haven't said a thing. Where did you get your degree, by the way? So neither of these pro or anti are people. You have to get away from the notion of thinking of them as real people. They're not real people. They're figments of the client's imagination. Also, they can beat on the client, then they can turn around and beat on the counselor, they can turn around and beat on the client again. They are free-floating, negative. Anyone can talk with anyone. No hitting. I require that nobody hits anybody. But anyone can talk with anyone in this model. So that the counselor and the client get a picture of the positive and negative forces, voices, if you will, in this interview. Research. Awareness. There's very little research on this model, unfortunately. I've been lazy on that, I'm afraid. What little there is suggests that awareness increases as measured by positive evaluations of counselors, favorable comparisons, and increased awareness of what are those negative messages that a client and a counselor might have. Knowledge increases as measured by better self-reported understanding, receptivity, and sensitivity to the kinds of problems from the client's cultural point of view. And skill increases in verbal expression, self-confidence, and perceived effectiveness. So that's the model. Now what I'd like to do is have you listen to the internal dialogue of a schizophrenic client. Where is our technician? The tape, I think, is in the machine. Is that right? Okay, let's see what happens. The cassette is going around the room. You can take a look at it. This is not what I'm advocating. This is a pathological perspective of internal dialogue to give you one picture of it. And then we'll go to a educational model. I have no idea how to turn this on. See if you can find the guy that's supposed to be running the audio. Any questions on the model so far while we're waiting for the technician? Yeah. if it's done in a safe and caring context. If it's your supervisor telling you what a lousy job you did, that's one thing. But here you've got the anti-counselor whose task it is to be a devil. It's quite more acceptable. I'd make the interviews very short. Let me know when you're ready back there. Okay? I make the interviews very short. Prepare them ahead of time that this person is the devil, this person is the angel. And of course monitor it in case if it goes wrong, stop it, but that's never happened to me. And keep the interviews about 5 minutes, 8 minutes. How we doing? Can't we just use the tape without hooking it up to any loudspeakers? It was when I turned it in. Okay. Not much. It's a learnable skill. It may not be teachable. You may not be able to teach people to do it, but people can learn to do it by being put in the context where it's necessary to do it. And from my point of view, it's a very important skill.
Competent.
Are you ready? Yes. By taking, like, let's say you're going to be working with Polish refugees, okay, and you don't know diddly about Polish refugees, but you're going to be working with them. You find an articulate, authentic resource people in the Polish refugee community and ask that person to find 2 other people that they can work with. You bring the 3 people in, you play the videotape showing the triad, and then you take your staff and one by one present them with this Polish refugee client, Polish refugee anti, Polish refugee pro, and the client learns more about what that Polish refugee client in a role-play setting, what they're thinking but not saying.
They can see all that.
What are you doing in
They
there?
can see it in there. And they have it in files. All those cabinets, they know. They
Open up the window. Open up the window.
Hey, it doesn't make any sense. Hey,
I did not say that.
hey.
Leave her alone. Leave her alone. I said leave her alone. What are you 2 doing in there?
It's a trick. Come, please
Hey.
show it to her. Show it.
Hey, they know. They know. Shut up.
What are you doing in there?
Get out. Why?
Ladies
Why?
away.
Why even try? They're not gonna hire. Don't waste it. Don't tell them that. Don't.
He lives in a rat alley, that's why.
Just listen.
Want me to stand on the desk and show you my history?
Who hired you? Oh, you're so competent.
You know why you really want me here?
But this job, it's not hired. This job isn't right for you.
What are you doing in there?
You couldn't do this job. So stupid. You can't even know. Right?
A reporter. You don't want a reporter.
Can't even
That's not
write.
what you really want.
Right. Just you.
I work in the post office. Open up. Close it. What are you doing in there?
Loser. Loser. Reporter? Who? You'll never get hired. Never, never, never. They can see all the bad.
What are you doing in
They
there?
can see it in there. And they have it in files. I wish all the cabinets, they know. They.
I'd love to go to that. That would be very nice.
Look at you, you look so, so
Really?
stupid.
Show it.
Trick to fool
Show
you.
him your books. I read Tom Sawyer twice.
Loser.
Get out of here. What are you doing in
Loser.
there? It's a trick. It's a trick.
Higher. They know. They know.
What are you doing in there?
Never. Never. Never.
Okay, that's what it looks like. That's what it sounds like from the point of view of this clinician who simulated the internal dialogue. Imagine trying to do a job interview halfway effectively while monitoring those kinds of dynamics, those kinds of sounds and noises at the same time. Very different. Okay, now, what I want to do thirdly, any questions on that before we leave it? Use that as one example in a clinical setting. What I want to do now is I want to show you a role play videotape made at the University of New Orleans of a quartet, a client, pro and anti, black females being counseled by a white female counselor. Somebody know how to turn this on? This is an example of the model. I hope there's time that we can actually try the model on after we've seen it.
And not really listen to what the counselor was saying.
I'm Diane Sinak, and I'll play the role of the counselor.
I'm Bonetta Ernestine, and I'll be playing the role of client.
I'm Janice Winder. I'll be playing the role of the pro-counselor.
I'm Alice Sumler, and I will play the role of the anti-counselor.
Hi, Bonetta. What brings you here today?
I'm really frustrated. I applied for a position and I didn't get it. And I think that they perhaps had other criteria that they didn't make me aware of.
You sound disappointed. What other criteria are you talking about?
Well, I know for a fact that I was the better qualified candidate because of attendance, because of past evaluations, and I wasn't selected. The person who was had been called in several times about poor attendance, about the work she was producing, but yet she was given a promotion. I just don't understand it.
It seems like you're really angry that you didn't get that position.
Yes, I'm really angry.
It sounds like you feel injustice, that you were the really more qualified one.
Right on target.
Can you tell me more about that?
Yes, I was the more qualified one. She was lighter skinned than I was, and perhaps that was the hidden agenda.
I see. You feel like because you had lighter skin, that's why they chose her over you. So you were discriminated against because of your skin color.
Right.
You got it.
In every other way, I was the better worker. So she has it, you know. The only thing I can see is that she's light-skinned and she looks more like them.
Them, you
long
mean more
hair,
like her,
pointed
right?
nose,
Okay
thin lips. I mean, really.
This is really upsetting to you.
Very much so, because they knew if I was to go in that office, I would be like a fly in a bowl of milk. And that's ridiculous. You judge people by the work they produce. I'm there for a job, not by what I look like or
I'm
who I
wondering
look more
how
like.
the counselor's judging you right now. I'm wondering if
So,
she's judging you
so
like
that
a fly
person
in the
looked
bowl
more
of
like a
milk.
white
She's
person.
accepting
I'm
you
wondering
as
how you
you
feel
are.
about
She's
me
not
right
judging
now,
you.
I
talking
really
to
don't
me as a
know
white person.
whether or not you're judging
not here
me. I
to-
mean, you're white.
she's not here
you're
to
not
think
black.
about how you're
you don't
feeling
know
about
what I'm
her.
experiencing.
You need to try and
So
find
you're
out
not
how
sure,
she
you're
feels.
kind of
She knows how
skeptical
it
of me
feels to
because
be
I'm
looked
white and I
over
very
and
well
passed
may
over
be
because she's a
judging
woman.
you just as the boss judged you.
The only difference is maybe because you're a woman, you can relate a little bit. Maybe you're being discriminated against because you're a woman, but certainly not because you're black or you're too dark.
I hear you saying there is maybe some similarity since we're both women, and maybe we could draw on that.
There's only one similarity, and that you're being a
But
woman.
not the skin color.
And not the skin
though.
color.
That's a
I
good
mean,
similarity.
have
She can
you
listen. She can
ever
understand to
been
some
denied a
extent.
job because you are not white enough?
You know she hasn't been denied a job. I
You're
don't
right,
know why you're
Vanetta.
here
I
talking to this
appreciate your
woman.
anger.
I think
I
you
have
would
no
do
idea
better
of what
if
it's
you would
like to
get
be in
with
your
a black
shoes.
counselor.
I wonder
someone
if you
that
could
really
help me out on that. I
understands.
really
give
would
her a
like to help you,
chance.
and I too am frustrated
She's
that
really
I
trying
have
to
not
help.
had the
She really
experience
wants
of
to
being a
listen
black
and to
person.
understand.
Could
Just
you tell me
open up
more
and
about
let
how
her.
it feels
You're really
to be
frustrated
black?
that you're dealing with a
Well,
black
I'm being
client.
discriminated because I'm black. I'm being discriminated against because I'm a woman. And there's only one criteria that may fit between you and I. But, you know, I'm wondering really if you can do the job. But I'm so frustrated. There's no other place I can go. So I'm willing to give you a little bit.
You know that you can
You're really
talk to a
frustrated,
black
but you are
counselor.
willing to
There
give
are
me a
quite
chance,
few
and
in
I'd
the
appreciate
talk.
that chance. Tell me a little more about being a woman and being black.
Well, before we get on to that, because I really am feeling a little bit uncomfortable, you know, you
And
being
you have a
white
right
and
to
all.
feel uncomfortable.
Are there any black counselors here? I mean, are
Vanetta, there are some black counselors, and if you feel more comfortable, I would refer them to you. But
She might
I'd
be
really
more
like the
objective
chance
because
to
she
help
isn't
you
from-
out.
I'm wondering if
She
she
might
feels
be able to
comfortable
listen
with
to
you.
you a
I'm
little more and
confused.
understand it with more
Because if I
objective
tell
willing
it
to
to
tell you
someone
about a
other
black
than
to
you,
understand.
then they're going
She
to
doesn't
say
have
I'm a
to be
sore
black to
loser.
help you.
So the thing that maybe one other thing you have going for you in my behalf is that, you know, maybe you'll be objective and look at it in its totality.
Give her a chance.
Then maybe not.
Do
I
you
don't
need
know.
objectivity
So you're kind of
today, or do you need
confused
someone
as
who
to
can
whether I would
truly
really be
empathize with you
qualified as a
and
white
understand?
person, even though I am a woman like you. You still question whether I would really know your feelings.
Yeah.
She's
And
reluctant,
it
but
seems
she's
like
opening
you're
up.
trying to question that
You're
yourself.
really
Look at
hitting
that
on the
puzzled
feeling.
look
I'm a
on your
bit
face.
reluctant, but I kind of sense that, you know, you're sincere and maybe you want to help me.
You
Maybe
kind
you'll
of
break
sense that,
the norm.
but deep
you know.
down inside, you
I
know
would like
that
to,
she
but I
isn't
know there's
sincere
this
because she isn't
hesitancy
black.
between us, and I'd like to talk a little more about that before we jump on.
Good. Allow her to
I mean,
express how she
can
feels.
you-
Look how
Can
sad
you
you
know
look
my
right now. She
experience, you
hasn't
know?
said anything about that
I'm
sadness
just
that's on
so
your face.
confused.
Do
you
you
know.
think she
I
really
really would like
understands?
to
All
talk
of
to
your
my other
sadness, she's picked up
co-workers,
on how you
but they're
feel.
going to say, you're a sore loser. And they themselves have come
That's
to
why
me
she
and
can be
said,
objective.
you know,
Give her a
you should have
chance.
gotten a job. You
So
know.
you feel even within your peers they won't accept this?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is
They
the-
say it's wrong, but I mean, they're not willing to do anything
How
about
do you
it.
feel
You
about
really
that,
wanna trust
about
her.
your peers'
You really
reaction
wanna
to this
trust her.
situation?
I feel betrayed because
I didn't think you
I
came
feel
here
a bit
to talk
betrayed,
about your
you
peers.
know.
I
I
thought
kind
you
of think
came here
maybe
to
they
talk
should have
about yourself
said, you
and
know,
your
we're
feelings.
concerned
Feel to
Yeah.
this lady.
that you know,
Excuse me, could you
Bernetta
look
didn't
at
get
me
the
for a
job.
moment?
You feel
Are you here to
betrayed
talk
with your
about your
Don't
friends?
peers
listen
and
to
maybe
her.
also
I thought you
betrayed
were
in the
here to talk
workplace?
about you and what
Do you
you're
also
feeling.
fear being
I am
betrayed
here to
by
talk
me?
about me, but in
Well,
talking
look at
about
me,
me, I'm
Bernetta.
going to talk
She
about
can
my
really
friends
help
as
you.
So you
well.
want to solve
I
your
wonder
friends'
if you could
problems,
block
not your
out
own.
all the conflict that's going on here and get to what you, Bernetta, really feel and
You know,
talk about that.
Exactly how you
It's just
feel.
like my ideas, my thoughts, my feelings are bouncing all over, you know. All of these things that's being said.
What
It's what
feelings
I
are bouncing
feel,
all
what
over?
I'm
You're talking about
confused.
feelings,
It
but
sounds
you're not
very
saying
difficult for you.
Yes, it is extremely
It's difficult for you to talk to her because you know that she won't listen. And you're
As the counselor, I wanted to address two things. first, the tremendous confusion that Bonetta seemed to be in, with all these voices on top of her anger and frustration with the situation, her uncertainty as to whether I was going to pick up on her feeling or not, and then maybe the discomfort of just looking at me being white, and that's the whole crux of the situation here. The second thing was to somehow snuff out the anti-counselor and the pro-counselor, so that we develop some kind of relationship through it all, through my honesty and hopefully some sincerity in trying to help her.
As the client, it was really important to me that she get a sense of my confused state. There were so many things that were just going on in my mind that I was thinking and that I was feeling. And I wanted her to pick up on that. In addition to that, I also wanted her to know that I was uncomfortable with her, primarily because she was white. The only thing that I felt as a client that maybe we could connect with was her being a woman, and that was sort of her saving grace. You know, maybe that was a building point for the two of us.
As the pro-counselor, one of my goals was to counteract a lot of the negativism that the anti-counselor was overwhelming the counselor with. By doing that, I attempted to do that by pointing to some of the positive things, thoughts that she may have been thinking. I pointed to the similarities, the fact that both of them are women, the fact that the counselor, although she was white, could probably relate to her in the terms of being passed over or discriminated against. The other thing I wanted to point out to the counselee was that because she was white, she could probably be objective, which is a positive or a plus for the situation. Another thing that I wanted to do was to support the counselor, to let her know when she was on target, to let her know when she was really understanding the experiences and feelings of the counselee. And hopefully in doing all of this, maybe help to build a more trusting relationship between the two of them.
As the anti-counselor, I think I had three main focuses here, and the first one was just to totally ignore the pro-counselor, because I didn't want to let the client hear the positive things that the pro-counselor was saying, and I didn't want the counselor to hear it again either. So if I ignored her, nobody would hear it, and I barely heard it. So I just pretended like the pro-counselor was not there. And with the counselor, I really tried to make her angry, just to frustrate her so by telling her things that you don't understand, you know, why are you here? And to make her so frustrated that she would get angry with me and lose focus of what was going on with the client. And with the client, I tried to point out or concentrate on key words that she had said so that she could really hear what she was saying, but also try to make her feel that she had done the wrong thing by even coming to this counselor because she was of another color. So I really wanted to get her angered somewhat too. And she would just give up and say, look, you know, you really can't help me here. Yes, you are a woman, but you can't help me.
Okay, we've been allowed to go over 10 minutes. What I'd like to do in the remaining time is get a couple of examples, have you try it on so you see the model from the inside. In order to do that, I need, which of you would feel comfortable role-playing using the model, actually trying it on? Show your hands if you're comfortable. Okay, can you find two other women that would understand? The problem is male-female relationships. Find two other women that'll be, the three of you will be a pro-client, anti, and find a male counselor. Who else? We're going to be running multiple role plays here. Who else feels comfortable taking on trying it on? Anybody else? Okay. Can you find two other males that you think would relate to? The three of you might understand what the other two are, what each one is thinking. as a pro-anti-climate team, and then find a female counselor. Anyone else want to try it out?
I thought you were my male counselor.
No, he's doing another one at the same time. Issue will be your male counselor. Okay? Set up. The rest of you, stand up, move around. Okay, you're looking for 2 males and a female. Okay, the rest of you get up and cluster around one or another. Anyone else want to try it out? For about 5 to 6 minutes. The problem is male-female relationships, so you can sit your chairs in a circle and start anytime you're ready. We're looking at gender as the salient culture feature here. Which one of you wants to be the anti? You're the anti. Your problem is okay, the rest of you cluster around. You can hear what's going on. Remember, there should always be more than one person talking at the same time. And I'll stop you in about 5 minutes. Yeah, that's your problem.